Good afternoon, and welcome to the Mission Impossible Bike and Pedestrian Safety webinar. My name is Kim Johnson, Interim Sustainable Travel Services Program Manager, and I coordinate with the Sustainable Commute Partners at our municipalities and universities across the region. I will be your host today. Thank you to everyone who has joined us, and a special thank you to our regional chambers, business members and organizations, employers, and all the others around the Triangle who helped spread the word about this webinar. Your assistance has helped to make this group remarkably diverse and a true representation of our community. So a little bit of housekeeping. Take a moment to familiarize yourself with the chat questions, with the chat and the question boxes at the bottom of the page. Feel free to add your name and organization in the chat so we can get to know each other. Today's session is being recorded, and we'll share the recording usually within 24 to 48 hours. All attendees will be muted during the presentation, and attendees are encouraged to ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A button located in the Zoom toolbar. When we transition to question and answer, attendees are welcome to ask questions with their cameras on. If you would like to ask your question in person, please indicate when you post your question. We have enabled live transcription services as well, and subtitles can be shown by accessing the live transcript option in the Zoom toolbar. Our program, our program is a regional partnership with like-minded organizations seeking to reduce congestion and improve air quality by reducing single occupancy travel or driving alone. The program offers transportation expertise and complementary assistance to businesses, residential communities, and commercial properties to give participating organizations a competitive edge in attaining their carbon reduction goals and tackling challenges such as employee recruitment and retention. Together, we support more than 160 employers in the Triangle, representing 150,000 Triangle commuters. Today's topic, speaks to one of the main tenets of our region's transportation demand, or TDM, program, travel, education, and safety, highlighting community efforts to improve our roads for all users and promoting bike and pedestrian safety. Our grant funds, programs, and materials are all provided through a partnership of municipalities and public transportation agencies. I encourage you to visit gotriangle.org/employer services to learn more. So today's Mission Impossible webinar, we will have two expert panelists. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Seth LaJeunesse. Seth is the Associate Director of Health and Community Sciences at the UNC Highway Safety Research Center. His research draws on social and systems sciences to explore how to accelerate the implementation of safe, equitable, and healthy transportation infrastructure and policies. Seth serves as a member of the Pedestrian and Transportation Safety Management Systems committees within the Transportation Research Board and consults with the National Safety Council and Smart Growth America on how to advance safe, equitable, and healthy transportation options for all. Seth?
Hey, thanks so much, Kim. And welcome, everyone. It's really a pleasure to speak with you today. I'm very happy to talk about the support model that we're employing here in North Carolina in the spirit of Vision Zero, really in the spirit of getting us to zero serious and fatal injuries on our roads in this state. To our knowledge, this is really the only program that uses this sort of public health systems oriented model in the US. If we go to the next slide, please. Thank you, Kim. This is our awesome project team. As you can see, we have people that are a multidisciplinary team. People in public health, epidemiology, we have health policy and management, injury prevention, and as well as road safety. If we can go to the next slide, please. Our partners are just as diverse. We have the Collaborative Sciences Center for Road Safety, which is housed at the UNC Highway Safety Research Center. The sponsor of this is the Governor's Highway Safety Program in North Carolina. We have the North Carolina Institute for Public Health as part of the team. We also have consulting from Vision Zero Network, ITRI, which is at NC State, and then the National Maternal Child Health Workforce Development Center, which really incorporates a lot of this sort of change management and systems thinking into this. If we can go to the next slide, please. So just to frame this a bit, I'd like to argue, and this is not just me, this is our team, basically saying that Vision Zero, or getting to zero deaths, is the result of instituting and fostering a safe system. So what do we mean by that? If we go to the next slide, please. What we mean by that is really this aspirational sense of what a safe system is, or a truly safe system, or what our friends at Monash University in Australia call an ultimate safe system. So just imagine what they're talking about here, right? It's one in which road users literally cannot be killed or seriously injured, regardless of their behavior, the behavior of other road users, right? This is a truly protective system. This is what we really want to get to in terms of road safety, one that protects people under all conditions. We go to the next slide, please. And to get us there, we can draw upon these principles. Some of you, if you're familiar with safe system, often the federal agencies call this the safe system approach. We'd argue that actually it's more of a desired end state, the safe system. I want to focus on two, but just to briefly go over these, the first one, death and serious injuries is unacceptable, is really the sort of moral goal of the safe system. The next two relate to humans making mistakes and they're vulnerable. We definitely should know that about humans, right? Even just some reflection, you will reveal the fact that that is true, that we all make mistakes and we are quite vulnerable, occupants of vehicles as well as those who are ambulating outside of vehicles. I will say that responsibility shared, the way it's been characterized, we don't necessarily agree with entirely, but today's focus is going to be on this first one here, the safety is proactive, and then the next one, if you advance the slide again, you'll see redundancy is crucial. So just briefly touch upon those before talking about Vision Zero in North Carolina. If we can go to the next slide, please. So what do we mean by safety is proactive? If I were to characterize the way we organize and or sort of operate the system today, I'd say that we're really focused right now still on efficient movement of vehicles rather than the substantive safety of users. In a safe system, the bodily safety of road users is the foundation for literally everything that the system operators would do. Planning the roadway network, designing the road infrastructure, operations of our signals and our roadways, and then maintenance as well. If safety is at the foundation, that's this paradigm that we're talking about in the safe system. We go to the next slide, please. And then redundancy is crucial. Just want to sort of throw out here that what we're talking about, particularly with redundancy is crucial, is similar to that layers of protection. You might have seen those images of Swiss cheese. But what we're really referencing is reliable protection for road users. This isn't just a PSA that's protecting people. We really want to talk about systems that are protective. So in this illustration here, this photo from Sweden, you can imagine if this vehicle had lane keeping technology, right? and also this guardrail. So if the lane keeping technology malfunctioned in this vehicle, right, and the person were to leave the roadway, they have this guardrail protecting them as well as the cyclist that's in this photo. That's what we talk about. We need that redundancy in the system so that one part fails, there's another part that's there to catch the fall. We go to the next slide, please. So how do we translate this vision for a safe system, this truly aspirational vision in North Carolina? That's what I'll talk about now. We go to the next slide, please. Just to put this into context, 3 municipalities, really 4, I will say Greenville and the coastal plains on the right hand side of the state here, they were engaging in Vision Zero-like work, but they just weren't labeling it as such. These municipalities have basically explicitly endorsed Vision Zero, usually made some type of proclamation around it, a resolution. This is what was happening in 2018 in North Carolina. If we go to the next slide, you see just 5 years later, we have about 20 municipalities that we're working with right now. And I'll talk about how we're working with them next. The next slide, please. So our support model really can be characterized by this visual here. If we start to the top left, we really do engage in a lot of systems thinking with the partners, thinking about the recurring patterns that we see in our injury, what's driving those, strategic planning in respect to those. We get into specific technical assistance with implementation strategies and what do we really mean by creating that protective system. But then we also do some evaluation and monitoring of how these municipalities, partners, and MPOs and such are actually implementing this. What are they learning? What are they iterating upon? And then the change management as well, with respect to adaptive leadership rather than reactive or other leadership styles. We have change management principles we apply. And we do this in 3 ways. We have an annual Leadership Institute as a 2-day kind of intensive event. And then we have regular community touch points. This is where small groups of municipalities and partners get together. And UNC team, we provide coaching to them, listen to what their barriers are, help them with their implementation. And then we also operate a Vision Zero statewide task force, which is comprised of basically state level actors that can move the lever on a lot of policies that we really do need to change in order to see safety gains. Go to the next slide, please. So just some tools. We have tools like developing a Vision Zero plan, really getting a sense here of your readiness in your community to engage with Vision Zero. To what extent do you have resources for this? Is there community buy-in? These sorts of things. We also have for our media partners and people who engage in media, how to reframe traffic reporting. So we take the blame off of individuals involved in crashes and start getting into the pragmatic can-doism about what we can actually do to overcome the road trauma we see. And then lastly, we have a implementation milestone checklist, which is really a self-assessment to reflect back to communities about the extent to which they're actually implementing safe system and Vision Zero practices. We go to the next slide, please. These are just some visuals of the annual Leadership Institute we have. You see on the left here, we have a panel talking about how they engage with community to do more quick build projects. We have more of an immersive exercise in the middle here where we actually visited some sites in Chapel Hill to talk about different tactical urbanism quick builds that were implemented. And then we have what we call on the right-hand side, team time to start really strategizing. What are our next steps? What resources do we have to deploy to this? What sort of actors need to be involved to move the ball forward? We go to the next slide, please. In our statewide task force, we meet with this group quarterly, and we prioritized more recently what we were going to do, what sort of activities, priorities did we have. Most of them right now are about building relationships with power in DOT and our General Assembly in North Carolina, but also with the community, with community influencers and social media and people that develop influential content. We also have one that's really focused on a specific policy right now, which is we have a ban right now, a restriction on funding independent pedestrian and bicycle projects in the state. We're trying to overturn that or eliminate that ban. We can go to the next slide. Just a very brief sort of overview of what we've been learning and some of the things that we're tracking. Right now, as you saw in the beginning, we started with 3, maybe 4 communities. Now we have 20, and that's growing all the time. So we have lots of adopting communities. This is really diffusing throughout the state. We have a growing number, probably largely due to the State Street for All federal grant with Vision Zero and safety action plans. We have far more local Vision Zero champions and resolutions that are spreading across the state. We are starting to see greater diversity in the sectors involved, in the data, in the sort of info sharing that's happening across the sectors in these local coalitions. It used to be, if I were to characterize it, very engineer and planner heavy. We now see a lot more people in public health and health communications involved, in law enforcement as well. And then we have communities, far more communities are actually conducting these readiness needs assessments as well, really understanding the conditions that they're operating in. And then lastly, we're seeing more staff, more money, the resources really dedicated to Vision Zero. So right now we are in a very fortuitous point in time in North Carolina. We're seeing major growth, major interest, and actually a lot more resources thrown behind this effort. We really look forward to seeing what happens next. So if you go to the next slide out, this is my contact information if we'd like to further the conversation. And I thank you. Back to you, Kim.
Thank you, Seth. So up next, you will hear from Rachel Anderson. Rachel is originally from Georgia. She moved to Raleigh in May of 2023 to pursue a career in the transportation sector. Currently, she works for the City of Raleigh's TDM program, Commute Smart Raleigh. Oops. And to help transition people from single occupancy vehicles to alternate forms of transportation. So it's all yours, Rachel.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Seth, for that presentation. It was really informative and cool to hear about the Vision Zero efforts in North Carolina and nationwide. So thank you for doing that. Good afternoon, everyone. As Kim said, my name is Rachel. I am with the City of Raleigh, North Carolina. And the presentation I'm going to give today is titled A Talk About the Walk. It's really exciting to be able to speak about my work, and I thank you all for tuning in. Next slide, please. So I work for the City of Raleigh, a program called Commute Smart Raleigh that is housed in the city's Department of Transportation. And our main goal as a program is to advocate for and encourage using alternate forms of transportation and get people out of single occupancy vehicles whenever possible. We do this by a combination of campaigns, events, community engagement opportunities, and partnering with local organizations and other municipalities to get the word out about our work. Next slide, please. One such yearly campaign is called Walktober, which is a campaign throughout the month of October that encourages walking as a form of transportation. We hold a few events during the month that are walking centric and provide pedestrian education materials to the public. What's one such event is actually happening this upcoming Tuesday. Our annual informational webinar. The theme this year is Anatomy of a Walkable City, and we have some exciting guest speakers from the city and from a more national organization. So if you're available, I believe Kim is going to give more information on that later on, so keep that in mind. Next slide, please. So another yearly campaign we do is called Lighten Up Raleigh, and this is a pedestrian safety focused campaign. It really emphasizes safety and awareness when traveling on roads as a pedestrian or a cyclist. This campaign runs from the end of October through November to coincide with the end of daylight saving time, when it starts getting darker out much earlier, and that becomes more of a danger for the average pedestrian or cyclist. The main goal of this campaign is to highlight steps pedestrians and cyclists can take to be as safe as possible when interacting with motor vehicles. Some examples of things we stress during this campaign include wearing reflective gear at night so motorists can easily spot you, adding lights to your bicycle, to the front and the back, using flashlights, and staying in well-lit areas as much as possible. Per North Carolina law, if you're not aware, cyclists riding after dark must have a front light and a back light, and the front light must be white and the back light must be red. That by law as a safety measure. Next slide, please. So to encourage abiding by these guidelines, last year, Commute Smart Raleigh collaborated with Go Raleigh Station in downtown Raleigh to give away bike lights and flashlights Monday through Friday during the day from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. I believe we're going to be doing that again this year towards the end of October / beginning of November. So if you're in the Raleigh area, I encourage you to stop by the bus depot downtown to get some cool giveaways. And then these are just some examples of social media images that we put out there to raise awareness about this campaign, including one ad about the giveaways at the bus station. It was pretty successful last year. We got rid of pretty much everything. So that's good. Next slide, please. Along with the City of Raleigh, we also support and partner with our regional partners with their safety campaigns to spread the word. North Carolina State University held their campaign, Lighten Up NC State, to coincide with ours to target the student population who bike to and around campus. They gave away free bike lights along with some other materials at several locations around campus. And additionally, the towns of Carborough and Chapel Hill have annual safety campaigns that target pedestrians. So we really make safety a priority here in the Triangle, not just in Raleigh, but our regional partners. We're all very passionate about remaining safe and visible on the roads. Next slide, please. So in addition to our annual monthly campaigns, we also maintain some year-round relationships with organizations that promote pedestrian and cyclist safety. As a city, we work really closely with Safe Routes to School, which, if you're not familiar, is a national initiative that promotes walking and biking to school for children through infrastructure improvements, safety education, awareness, and incentives to school communities. We have promoted Safe Route to School principles through volunteering at schools for National Walk and Roll to School Day, which was a couple of weeks ago, and traffic garden events, which we have one coming up this weekend, where children are able to learn traffic safety on a child-sized streetscape and learn how to safely interact with the road and with cars. So that's really important work that we do. The earlier, the better, in our opinion, and we encourage these improvements to the already built environment to promote that safety as well. So it is important to promote these safety initiatives and programs due to kind of limited proper pedestrian infrastructure in our region. While we encourage active transportation when possible, we also stress the importance of being safe and aware, particularly after dark when most accidents occur, which is why we do these Lighten Up safety events that coincide with when it starts to get darker at 5 p.m., which is when most people leave work. So there are lots of cars on the road. So we really stress that during that time. Next slide, please. And lastly, this is just my contact information. Feel free to reach out with any questions, comments. We love hearing from the community and from others outside of our community with anything that you might have to say. If you want more information about any of these events that we do, if you live in the region and want to know when one is or where, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to the Commute Smart email, and visit raleighnc.gov/commutesmart for a little more information about our program and what we do and the kinds of things that we really support. And that's back to you, Kim.
Thank you, Rachel. So up next, we will have questions and answers. So to help us transition to the question and answer portion, I encourage you to type your questions in the Q&A bar on the Zoom toolbar. And if you'd like to ask either Rachel or Seth a question directly, please use the raise your hand option in the toolbar. As always, let's be respectful of each other's time and expertise while we gather more information and insight from the panelists. Remember, we're all here to learn more about Vision Zero, bike and pedestrian safety, and the regional campaigns that promote and support those efforts. So, let's see. I'll look for questions. Give me one moment. I do have I have one question that someone emailed me about Vision Zero while I'm looking for questions in the Q&A bar. Seth, do you feel that the Vision Zero campaign, sometimes the material comes across as being negative? Do you feel that has an impact on getting people to just kind of receive the material? Because, looking at the statistics and all, how have you been able to just kind of get that information out in a manner that people are just willing to really receive it?
That's a terrific question. Thank you for sharing that, Kim. In fact, one of the things we recommend and we try to embody ourselves in practice is not to start out with and focus on the level of harm, because it's pretty significant, right? In North Carolina, every year we have somewhere about 1,600 deaths, far more injuries. Multiply the deaths by over 100, and you get a sense of the serious injuries that we have on our roads. We see a lot of this, right? A lot of the agencies, a lot of partners, a lot of the media like to focus on the negative, on how bad things are. Instead, what we try to do is actually prop up what life would be like with a truly safe system, right? Imagine that you, your friends, your family can get to where you need to go using the modes of your choice and the routes of your choice without fear of being injured in traffic. So these are the types of frames we like to use, is talking about what a safe transportation system would actually afford us, what it would give us and provide us, what it would mean, and how it would be so much more pleasant than what we have today.
That's good to know. Also, this one is for you as well, Seth. If someone dies in a known to be unsafe public facility, is the state or the local municipality legally responsible? I'm not sure. That was from an anonymous attendee.
Sure, yeah. It's a great question. Without knowing specifics of course, of the incident, in a safe system, that a responsibility is sort of a key construct. If we were to look at places that are doing really well, like in Western Northern Europe, we would see that for every fatal crash, there tends to be a response like, what could we have done differently with respect to the design of the roadways? What could we have done differently to prevent this from a vehicle standpoint, like vehicle technology, like intelligent speed assistance, emergency stopping, emergency braking, that sort of thing. So if it is on a locally owned roadway, depending on what the nature of the problem was, if there is clearly some indication that the environment is very confusing for people and people are making mistakes left and right on it, then I think we could say, yes, there's something about the design that we could change that would prevent this. That responsibility question is a very good one. And I would say right now, if we were to characterize what we do, is we look at individuals involved in crashes and we assign the responsibility to the individuals, which is not going to, if we look over the long term, is not going to deliver us a safe system.
Wow. So the next question is for Rachel. Did you partner with a cycling or lighting specific company like Cat Eye for Lighten Up campaigns, or do you purchase and order through a swag company or Amazon, something like that? How do you get your light materials?
So we have limitations with our budget and where we're allowed to spend our money as a city. We don't necessarily have, we have certain limits we have to keep. So we usually order from a specific swag company where we can get a lot of them in bulk for less. So that's normally what we do. And we also have to keep consistency with the city branding. So that has to be approved as well. So we usually order from swag companies that does things in bulk like that.
Okay. I think I have another one for you. What you mentioned the law with the front and the rear lights. So what does the law require around the brightness of the light, or how far you have to be able to be away to see the lights? Is there anything around that?
Yes, so the front light must be visible from at least 300 feet in front of the bicycle, and the back has to be visible from at least 300 feet behind. So bright enough so that 300 feet in either direction, a motorist or someone would be able to see you.
Okay. And I think this would be for Seth. So it says, we have business owners who seem reluctant to trade parking spots for bike lanes. Do you have evidence that bike lanes increase business revenue?
Another great question. There have been quite a few empirical studies on this. Generally speaking, it's hard to, context is everything, right? There's no universal law around, hey, you put in a bike lane, you're definitely going to see an increase in spending and revenue. But of the studies we've seen, mostly out of Portland, some in Canada, Toronto, places like this, we have seen a positive relationship with providing bicycle infrastructure, bicycle parking, bicycle lanes, things like this, and increasing in local spending. And the theory behind that is because basically people who are riding bikes or walking tend to make shorter trips than people who are driving. When they make shorter trips, they tend to visit local establishments more frequently. So not that every time they're going to an establishment are they spending more money than someone who drove there, but they over say a month period, they're spending more on average. So in fact, when you provide more modal choice, complete street studies have shown this as well, it tends to relate to more local economic activity. So yes, it's a great question.
So Rachel, are there any discounts with like the bike stores or that are associated with your Lighten Up or your bike safety campaigns? And if so, are they just specific to Raleigh or out or in Raleigh and then outside of Raleigh as well?
So historically, we have done that in the past. I believe we did that last year or the year before. I don't believe we are going to do it again this year due to lack of different things happening at once. As far as just in Raleigh, I'm not entirely sure about that. I believe other municipalities would have to work with their local shops. So as far as just Raleigh, we did just Raleigh local bike shops, and it was only a few bike shops that participated. It wasn't like every bike shop in the city, but I don't believe we're going to be able to do that this year, unfortunately.
Okay. So I have a question that came in from Laxman Bisht. I feel like I butchered your name. I'm sorry. And this is a question for Rachel. How do you measure how effective your campaigns are?
That's a great question. That's something that we get a lot. And the answer is kind of difficult because it's hard to empirically measure something like a campaign where you just have people kind of participate on a volunteer basis. And it's difficult to track that measurements and get metrics from it. So we kind of just track it as people kind of self-reporting or posting on social media, or how many likes we get on a social media post promoting something like this, or how many, for example, some people will respond to our Twitter post with their own picture of them using their bike lights or riding the bus or whatnot. So that's one way that we measure it. We also measure it by people sometimes will tell us personal testimonies. They'll email us or talk to us when we're tabling and say, I saw you guys tabling and it inspired me to go out and get a bike light for my bike because I didn't have one. So we rely on a lot of really just personal anecdotes rather than metrics because it's kind of difficult to measure something like a campaign.
Awesome. So this question is for Seth. Are there stats for individual communities? And if so, where can we find them regarding crashes and fatalities and that type of stuff?
Yes, to varying degrees. Some individual communities are better than others at sort of tracking things that we might call as antecedents to crashes, like operating speeds, drivers yielding to pedestrians in crosswalks, those sorts of things. You can please feel free to get in touch with me. I'm happy to share those with you. I don't have the information at my fingertips right now, but I can direct you to some assessments, some data, if you want to get in touch with me. We're seeing some early successes in places that have been doing this for some time and have good coalitions up and running.
So this is from an anonymous attendee. Besides the cities mentioned, is there desire to set up other cities in North Carolina with Vision Zero? If so, what would that partnership look like, i.e. independent versus oversight versus network?
Oh, great question. The way we've been operating this support model right now is that we frame ourselves and we serve as again, kind of support. So if another municipality or region, an MPO, an RPO would like to be involved in this effort, we would definitely encourage them to get in touch with us. And then we would have a discussion with them, sort of an orientation, just exploring what the coalition locally looks like. What we do try to encourage is that municipalities have at least 3 different sectors involved in their sort of coalitions. We see this as the most effective way to actually affect change is when there are multiple groups with different resources, different skill sets, collaborating, aligning their goals and their actions. So basically, it's an agreement, a sort of a tacit agreement between our UNC support team and the municipality, the entity. We immediately get that entity involved in the broader network across the state, and then set up meetings that are on monthly schedule, quarterly as well, to again just engage with the peer network, and to really upskill and learn some things, both about their condition, but also different funding opportunities, different safety innovations, you name it. So we try to see it as a sort of mutually beneficial model. It benefits us because we learned so much from local communities actually implementing this in real time, implementing sort of a safe system. But also we hope to be a resource providing research, data, different ways of thinking about the problem, and problem solving. So we really do operate this as a sort of broader coalition in a sort of mutual learning model.
Right. It looks like we had a question from Ashquims Metin Nichols, and I feel like I really messed up your first name. If you would like to ask your question, I will set your.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you for running this session, and it's glad to be here. I have a question for Seth. Thank you, Seth, for letting me know about this on LinkedIn. This session has been great. I had a question about one of the terms that you used earlier in your presentation about redundancy. I'm wondering, based on your experience working on Vision Zero projects at UNC, if there's any particular strategies or directions that you recommend that municipalities or organizations try to seek to achieve economies of scale when trying to seek redundancy, because I think that when trying to build a safe system, it can often maybe require a lot of costs and a lot of resources. So I'm wondering if there's any tips that you may have for those who are looking to achieve such redundancy with minimal resources or budget.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Action's always asking the tough questions. We know Actions went through, I believe, still with UC Berkeley. Is that right, Actions?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So the Actions and I will work together on a project as part of the Collaborative Science Center for Road Safety. I'm very glad that he's here and asked such a great question. Yeah, the redundancy question in respect to sort of economies of scale. To me, the economies of scale revolve around the sort of upstream policy that we can sort of put in place. So, for instance, if we were to work with our transit agencies, right, and plotting out new bus stops on a network, we think of sort of lower cost countermeasures, like say pedestrian gateway treatments, right, where in advance of a marked crossing, you have sort of flex post or some other sort of vertical delineator. You put that in advance of that, both in the center line and on the edge line, so that drivers, when they're approaching a crossing, they naturally slow down and they increase yielding rates remarkably. So this would be this would be a relatively inexpensive countermeasure. If you put them at every single mid-block transit stop, I think you'd see major safety gains because half the people that get off of buses tend to cross the street. It's actually interesting that we have so many bus stops where there actually is no safe crossing anywhere near the stop itself. So that's just one idea. And then there's others with respect to injury surveillance. So though that it's not sort of like a visualizable redundancy like you would think of like a guardrail coupled with that vehicle technology of lane keeping, it is more around the policy with respect to investment. So like when you think of if a town is developing, for instance, and they have newer online development coming in, you think of ways that you can minimize road user conflicts, the more dangerous kinds, right? Where you're going to have like 90-degree crashes between vehicles or with older pedestrians having to cross and access the place. So upgrading our street standards in our traffic impact analyses to reduce risk upon accessing different land development. That is again an example of an upstream policy change that wouldn't really cost very much, but that for all future developments and redevelopments would ideally significantly reduce risk associated with accessing land developments.
Thank you very much. That was a great answer.
Thank you.
Great. So Logan Healy asked, if I want to request a crosswalk on an NCDOT owned or maintained road, who do I contact?
On an NCDOT owned road, that would be a question for either the district engineer where you're located or the division staff. If you would like to, you can go to Google and say North Carolina DOT divisions. You'll see that there's 14 divisions in the state. Within the divisions are districts, and there is usually a point person within those. They would be the one that would probably talk to municipal staff or elected officials to actually visit the site, perhaps, or just have a conversation around, whether or not a crossing would be appropriate, what sort of crossing should be installed, that sort of thing.
So here's another, for safety, the big issue seems to be vehicle speeds. What are some things that communities can do to get car speeds reduced in their neighborhoods?
And everybody with the great questions today. Something that we're seeing right now with the Vision Zero communities that's really promising is they're propping up really robust sort of neighborhood traffic calming programs. And by that, I mean, they are developing means and schemes of saying, let's go out proactively and look at sort of our residential road network and see where we might have some issues with speed. Because you can usually tell from the cross section of a street, right? Streets that kind of welcome higher speeds. And they'll approach the neighbors, if they have a neighborhood association, will do that, and say, we have these tools in our toolbox. So it could be traffic calming, if you think of chicanes that alternate sort of curb extensions down the street. Sometimes you have speed humps, though that vertical sort of traffic calming is something that we don't always recommend for every context because it can make the sort of street noisy, and people sometimes tend to speed between the traffic, the speed humps. Also, emergency vehicles the drivers don't tend to like them. So we think if lane narrowing and other traffic calming strategies, mini circles within neighborhoods, these are all things that North Carolina communities that are involved in this effort are experimenting with now. Sometimes in a quick build fashion, sometimes they're going out and building more permanent infrastructure. But that is definitely a traffic calming program like that is something that we highly recommend.
Here's another, what can community members do to let their representatives know they want more pedestrian friendly infrastructure?
Amen to that. I think appealing to what pedestrian friendly infrastructure would do for you, your family, your neighbors, your community. Again, getting back to that, what would a safe, healthy transportation system allow us to do? Right? We can talk about the problems. We can talk about, we certainly do want to talk about the problems that harm is happening on our roads, and it's not proportionally shared according to income and race. What we want though is, like you're saying, we want to be able to walk using our own power to get to where we need and want to go. And just imagine if everyone who is able to do that is able-bodied. Everyone who does not or cannot drive a vehicle can do that. I think creating sort of a vision and really framing it in a way of what this would allow us to do and how it would allow us to live healthy, active lives, I think is sort of the way to go.
I have another question from Laxman Bisht for Seth. Have you ever come across a situation where community members opposed a road safety intervention? Also, it would be nice if you could share your experience to convince them about the safety benefits of that intervention. Thanks, Laxman, TU Delft.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laxman. And it's wonderful to hear from TU Delft. We're constantly stealing ideas from TU Delft. Yes, I almost part and parcel with talking about safety in the U.S. context is is the fact that some people will kind of bristle. So an example of this was where I live in Carborough, North Carolina, just west of Chapel Hill, where the University of North Carolina is. We were instituting a road diet there. So it was a 4-lane undivided facility. It was going to be brought down to 3 lanes, a center turn lane, uh, a lane in each direction for vehicle travel, and then bike lanes. Um, there was quite there. I wouldn't say there was a lot, but there was definitely a coterie of people who did not like the idea very much. There's commonly maybe some misunderstanding around road diets and how they might contribute to traffic congestion or make it worse, which is not necessarily true. Um, so what we had done is actually developed a presentation for the board of the basically the town council here, framing again why you might want to install a road diet. Um, just all the sorts of crashes that you can reduce, the crash types you can reduce, the fact that you're providing bicycle facilities, you're providing more modal choice for people, really again trying to talk about what is it that this safety intervention brings us. Well, for us, it brought us lower speeds, thus quieter streets. It brought us a street that was actually easier to cross on foot. There's several transit stops along the route we're talking about. Again, modal choice. People have space now to bike. Um, so that's how we sort of framed it again. I think if there's some light explanation we can do for the general public, because not everybody is focused on road infrastructure and traffic safety. Not everyone is an expert in this, and that's understood. We can provide just a light explanation for why and how things work, like why roundabouts are good because they reduce crash angles, for instance. Um, and also just what it gives us, roundabouts, great example. Reduce crash angles, lowering the speed of entry upon the circle. It improves the operations it tends to, because you don't have to wait now at like a traffic light. And it can, in some circumstances, improve air quality because there's not idling vehicles waiting at a traffic light, for instance. So just again, I think explaining why you might be doing that and what it would afford a community, all the positive things that it would bring, I think is one really solid way to approach this.
Good. I have one for Rachel. And by the way, Laxman said thank you for your explanation. So Rachel, 2 parts. So when will the lighten up materials be distributed? I think you said that earlier, but if you could say it again. And also, will there be other activities associated with the Lighten Up campaign besides just picking up lights and materials at the transit station?
Yeah, so we're going to give those out probably next week or the week after. The end of October / the beginning of November, going into the middle of November is typically when we hand those things out. So those will be available at the Raleigh bus station downtown. And as far as other activities, we might do a couple of tabling events. We're not entirely sure yet. This is typically more of like a social media campaign than an in-person campaign. So I'm not entirely sure yet, but as soon as I know, we will get the word out there.
Okay. Let's see. So I think just about everything has been answered. Are there any other questions? Anybody that I didn't get to? So I have one question. If someone is on a bike and I feel like we know the answer to this, but it was asked, so I want to make sure I state it. If someone's on a bike, are they allowed to be on the road with cars?
Ye-
Either one.
To share the road state. Yes. Short answer, yes.
Yeah, Rachel is totally right. In most facilities, yes, unless they are prohibited by law, like some of our freeways.
Fantastic. So let's see. Thank you both for sharing such great information and insight with us today. And with only 2 Sundays left before the time changes, I, for one, will be on the lookout for the Lighten Up campaigns around the Triangle. So, and also I wanted to thank the webinar committee and all those others that just helped to pull everything together. We certainly could not do it without you. And thank you, everyone who participated today, who joined us. And also, as Rachel was saying earlier, if you have not registered, please do so. Register for the City of Raleigh's Commute Smart Raleigh webinar coming up next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. It is not a webinar, but it's a walk-in-ar. I love that. The anatomy of a walkable city. And I do believe that the link to join is to register is in the chat. And we also, with every webinar that we do, we like to find out from the participants how we can make improvements, what you liked, what you didn't like. It's completely anonymous. There is a blank for you to leave your name and email. Feel free to leave it blank if you don't want to share it. But if you ask a question or you want other information, please fill it out so we can reach back out to you with the requested information. Otherwise, we just want your opinions. We just want to know what you thought, what you liked, what you hated, what you want more of, what do you want to talk about next. We want all those details. It really helps us to create better programming. It helps us to figure out what your interests are and what would be a good topic of discussion for future webinars. So that's what we do with all that information. We use it to create more programming. So with that, and you can check the link should be in the chat for the survey as well. And just in case you don't have it, here's everybody's email, everyone's contact information, and that should be going in the chat in a moment if it's not there already as well. And so that's all I have for the day. I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon, and I will give you your 2 minutes back. Have a great day, guys.